Hey everybody, what is going on? It's your boy Megaman again, and another episode of Megaman Legends. And my guest today, there is so much to say about this man. I will say it's thanks to him I got my first taste in competing in Canada Cup, which is out. Well, I will consider it an international. Not once, but twice, technically. He is, to me, in my eyes, he is Mr. World Warrior because he goes to pretty much a lot of events. Like, a lot of events. And, he has, this man has a lot of tape. I always call him, the Canadian encyclopedia. So, everybody, introduce him on this episode. It is Mr. Brett Psychochronic. What is happening, my guy?
Well, hello. This is Psychochronic, aka Psycho Rarity, and here I am as a guest on Megaman Legends.
You give it a double intro. That's actually funny. I like it though. And it's like I was saying to myself when I was starting this project, right? I really wanted to get you on an episode. Only because one of the things that, like I said, you definitely helped me in my career in terms of, competing for ST. That's one thing. But then at the same time, I know for a fact you've helped others. But then at the same time, on top of that, you traveled pretty much everywhere in terms of competing. And not to mention, you have all these tapes that, you have from I want to say the really, really grassroots days of the SGC. So I had to know, I had to hear your story in terms of, how you got into it, what do you feel about it, what's your tournament story. So I'm really honored that you're on this episode, man.
I'm really honored that you're willing to put me on your show. All the other people that wanted to put me on their show, a couple of years later, they never came back.
Well, I wouldn't let you down, man. That's for sure. We'll never let you down, man. So, all right. So let's get into it, man. So tell me, man. Let's introduce yourself. Take me back. Take me back. When did you started? When did the age of psycho rarity began, man? When did you start gaming?
When did I started gaming? When I was 6 years old, actually. So 1991, 1990 actually. 1991, give or take. Mm-hmm. It started off when we, you know how sometimes you go on family vacations on the summer?
Yeah.
All right, so we went to a camping ground outside of the Toronto area. So it's in a little town called Kitchener, Ontario. It's like a little family camping ground called Bingman's. So at the time, this was 1990. What I remembered is, think of an inflatable dome. Like you can play tennis or golf in the wintertime. Think about that. This inflatable dome was basically an arcade and a ice cream shop, and outside was a shuffleboard. What I remembered is my cousin beating Street Fighter 2 World Warrior with only 4 credits, so 25 cents, so for $1, and it took him 4 tries to beat the game, and he had a crowd of 40 people around him thanking him. That's how I got exposed into video games first.
Oh, interesting.
So after that, a year or so after, my father, who was diagnosed with coronary cancer, died. So my father's side of the family, to cope with me and my brother, they bought us our first gaming console, second gaming console, which was the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. So we got Super Mario World and Street Fighter 2 World Warrior like every other kid in the block, if you understand that.
Yeah.
That's how me and my brother started off in gaming. It was a coping mechanism and also another hobby to explore. You understand? You lose your father figure at a very young age. I mean, come on, it really does get to you. You understand?
It does, yes.
Yeah.
It does. I mean, I never met my father, to be honest with you, and I don't know the grief that you went through, so I will say firsthand my condolences. And honestly, a coping mechanism for gaming. I mean, honestly, I would say it's. I really feel that because I do go through that sometimes as well. Like when the world is rough and everything, I really feel like when you game, it's like you're in your own space, and you're playing the game that you love. All the distractions that surrounded you, that was in the world, it just ceases to exist afterwards. And then it's like you feel good. You know what I'm saying? You feel good. You feel like it's just calming. That's all I can say. It's like a really calming feeling with that.
And also gaming became a hobby. It became like the best main interest for me growing up. You compare yourself to all the kids in your school, and everyone has their extracurricular activities. Some of them baseball, golf, ice hockey, figure skating, and then you have your other students, Chinese school, Polish school. I always felt like my talent was gaming. You go to school, there's going to be that one student that that student has the best talent of whatever and can whoop everyone's ass in it. I always felt like my talent was gaming. It doesn't matter what game it was at the time. It was one of those, I'm too nerdy to the point that you just are not going to beat. And the same thing applied for my brother at the same time too.
I see. Well, I could understand in terms of your brother. You and your brother definitely gamed. I would say for me, it kind of started with my uncle because he was the one that introduced me towards it. And usually, because my younger brother wasn't much of a gamer, to say the least, but my uncle was like, he would enjoy playing games and then kind of get tired of it at the same time. And then he would just kind of, we would sit down, and it's like a bonding type of thing with that because he would like the games and I would enjoy it. Like I tell people, like I think my first game that I've played was Super Mario Brothers 3, and from then it was that game. And virtually, I hope people are listening. I'm just gonna keep saying it. I think that is probably the most goated Mario Brothers game ever, and because people would say Super Mario World is actually really good, but to me, I think Super Mario 3, it's like, come on. It's like you got a frog suit and a Tanuki suit. I mean, and the mechanics for that game is very ahead of its time. So people just don't understand that. But back to what I was saying, like that family member, my uncle, he taught me this because he taught me how to game because I was having a hard time in school and I needed a way to kind of just like not exert my anger, but more just kind of look towards it. And gaming kind of calmed me down severely. So,
gaming is a perfect coping mechanism, especially if you're a young kid growing up in school and you're getting bullied around. I mean, I can agree with that.
Exactly, man. So, so tell me, what got you into fighting games actually?
We grew up with Street Fighter. So growing up, me and my brother were the only people in school that had the Sega Saturn. So we didn't have the PlayStation, but we got the 64. But we had the Saturn first, so it was like playing an almost identical port of the arcade if you were to play fighting games. And one of the games we had was Street Fighter Alpha 1. We also had Street Fighter the movie and Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3. And then eventually, within time, we were also the first to have a Sega Dreamcast because we didn't want to wait another year and a half for the PlayStation 2. So we just got the Dreamcast, and it was everything that was identical to the arcade ports. CVS 1 and Alpha 3 were the games that really sharpened my mind into taking fighting games more seriously.
I see.
Yeah, CVS 1 and Alpha 3.
CVS 1 and Alpha 3. So that's where. So those were the first games you played for fighting game. Well, I don't want to say first games, but
The first Dreamcast. That and I also had Marvel vs. Capcom 2.
oh, okay, good, cool. So what would it? So what would be if you would have had to name your favorite top 3 fighting games? What would it be?
I don't know. Kind of. I mean, we didn't make it to 2001 yet in the storyline. Ooh,
I know.
At the time, CVS 1, Alpha 3, and Alpha 2.
At that time.
Good. At that time. So we're going into 2001s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now tell me, take me. 2001. What was happening then with you?
2001, I was going through a very rough time in my life because, constant bullying and, racial harassment and, kind of stuff like that a teen should not go through. And I felt like I had to change my life temporarily. So I actually moved out of the Toronto area, moved right near Detroit to a border city called Windsor, Ontario, just to finish off my high school. And I didn't play any type of games. Technically I had a Dreamcast, but I was all by myself. Basically you had no friends back in your second high school. So within my high school days, while everyone was joining the FGC, which was via Shoryuken forums, I didn't do that yet. That doesn't take place until 2004.
The SRK, the good old SRK forums.
Yeah. So the first 3 years of the scene, I did not exist. 3 or 4 years of the scene, I did not exist. I didn't even know, a fighting game forum even existed at the time.
I see. So around so basically, you discovered the SRK forums, right?
I discovered the SRK forums after high school because at high school, in one of my exams, one of the other students had games to sell. He had 2 games to sell, and I bought them. One of those games happened to be Capcom versus SNK 2 EO, and this is for the original Xbox. So you can say that game was my introductory game for me to enter the FGC, because once I moved back, I had that game. I had my brother's console. I had an Xbox Live, a couple of those Xbox Live 2-month trial cards, and then that's how I started taking fighting games more serious.
Interesting. I see. And yeah, definitely shout outs to the OG Xbox. Freaking love that console. And Capcom for the SNK2 EO. Yeah.
Yes.
I remember when that was released. It was kind of weird because it was sort of like a big deal because
it was.
It was a big deal because even though people had the original Capcom for SNK2, which was on the Dreamcast, and then it went to PlayStation 2. People did so. There were no way of you would have your meetups, right? You would definitely have your meetups and everything like that, and then you just bring it over. But there was no real net play at the time being. So
no, there was not.
The OG Xbox, literally, even though EO was yes, it was definitely the nerfed version of Capcom for SNK2, pretty much, where they kind of took out the whole row canceling and all that stuff, and people, I would say the hardcore players of the CVS2 days said, yeah, that game is fake and everything like that, which, I can understand to each their own, but they would have to understand that game when it was EO, when it came out on the it came on the GameCube first, yes, and then afterwards it came to the OG Xbox. It introduced a whole fleet of new people that was afterwards.
Yes, it did. It did actually.
So I was just kind of amazed in terms of there were people that was there that played it on there, and then they shifted back to the original CVS2. So, shout outs to the OG Xbox though. But all right, but tell me, 2004. Let's keep going. Tell me what was going on during that time.
So when I moved back, I took a year off. Like you had to take an extra half year of school to make up the failure. So when I graduated high school in January 2004, I took 1 year off, meaning I'm not going to do anything, but it was expected that I would have part-time employment coming towards me. I can literally just sit down all year. And I felt like, you just graduated off high school, you went through 15 years of schooling. It's only fair to have 1 year off before, you make your plan of whatever, college or apprenticeship or workplace. So within that 1 year, I just played on the Xbox Live and I just worked part-time within all of that 1 year. That's all I did. It wasn't until 2005 I started going out, because I had every fighting game for the original roughly every fighting game. CVS 2 EO, then eventually Guilty Gear, SF Anniversary, and one of the games I had was Dead or Alive 2 Ultimate. So in Shoryuken forums, they had fighting game discussion. Please judge all the net codes. Like, how would you tier all the net codes? And I put my list. Dead or Alive was one of the worst. And out of nowhere, I get a message, another Mississauga person that's not in our forums, and I get a private message from someone locally in my city to invite me to explore the fighting game community.
Interesting. Wow, that's pretty interesting. Now, tell me, what was going through your mind when you got that message?
I was going through my mind of like, I want to step things up, and like at the time I was 19. I just turned 19 years old. So I felt like, I don't really have much of a good social aspect in a social environment, and this is the first community I'm exploring. I just turned into an adult. I want to explore other communities and, branch out and explore the world somehow. This was the gateway out.
Oh, interesting.
And kind of going through a little bit of my history, I started off in CVS 2 EO. The problem is because this is the inferior version of the game. I entered this community ass backwards, if you think about it. Now it's like everything you've ever learned about CVS 2 EO is thrown out the window at this point. You basically have to relearn the game, along with the fact that I'm a poor person. Hey man, I'm a broke 19-year-old. I have to play at home on the Xbox pad. Now I find out, if you're gonna enter this community, the standard is you have to play on the arcade stick. So that means I have to learn, another type of mechanism just to go on with the scene, because I cannot enter this community with a controller. Doesn't matter. That's just not gonna happen, because you find out that Toronto is all about the arcade. On top of that, of all my years of gaming, even though I've stated this a lot of times, even though I started off as an online warrior, I had older arcade roots, because when I did the research of what I got messaged, there was an arcade that nobody ever heard of back then. It was called the game, not the game Skybox, Wizard's Castle. Even though that the city I'm in, Mississauga, Toronto, GTA, the FGC community starts off in 2001. My arcade got shut down in 1996. So
why it got shut down?
Yeah. Rough activity. Rough activity. Trust me.
Gotcha. I got you.
I lived in the roughest part of Mississauga, basically. Everyone lived in the suburbs with all these houses. I lived in almost the ghetto in disguise.
I see. Well,
so that was my introduction. It's like, I want to explore this community, and I want 1 year here to kind of observe everything and see if it's worth, the hassle, and worth, my time and interest in it, and whatever.
Right. I see.
So what I thought in my mind when I got that invite, okay, I'm going to accept this invite. We're going to play some games both in the arcade and at the guy's house, even though we got to use PS2 pads. And, all right, I'll just go to the next tournament. All right, where's this next tournament? I'll just see how it goes on from there.
Right.
And I remembered. I think it was when I entered this community, it was January 23, 2005.
Wow. I think I was in the, what was I? What grade was I in 2005? I think I was in the 10th grade. I was a sophomore in high school. So, okay. So tell me, 2005, you entered this community. Now, what was going through your mind during that, I would say?
What am I expecting? Because majority of the people in the city I lived in were entered this community all as high school kids. At this point, the Mississauga part of the scene was 4 years old. So by this logic, I'm the first person to join this community after the Daigo Parry, because the Daigo Parry, it inspired a lot of people to step their shit up and explore the community.
Right, yeah.
All right? On top of that, I'm the only person that entered at least my city's FGC as an adult, not a high school student. So I have a much different mentality of what I'm going to deal with. On top of this, I live in a city that's known primarily for one game, Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So I felt like this is going to be a much harder journey because we didn't even escape to Toronto. We didn't even talk about Toronto. Mississauga is where I come from.
Right.
Yeah.
So, MVC 2, pretty much how you entered, right? Going from pad to stick, pretty much from pad to stick. I actually have a question.
Whoa. No, I have to go from Xbox pad to American stick, and then in our arcade in Toronto, we played on Japanese sticks before it became the global standard. So you have to double transition.
Really?
On top of that, in Toronto, there's a place called Orbit Entertainment Center. It's basically Japanese cabinets. That was the only place that you could play tournaments. So this puts anyone else from outsider cities, Mississauga, Brampton, even downtown Toronto, you have to go all the way to uptown Toronto and play on a Japanese stick, even though you specialize on an American stick. So within this time frame, this scene goes through a quote-unquote stick crisis.
Oh, really?
Because we do go through a stick crisis because it's like, well, some of your best players, they play on American stick. But this scene, you can the only place to viably host a tournament is on Japanese stick.
I see.
Yeah.
So, what was it? So tell me, during that time, you had to double transition, basically. So you went from Xbox pad to American stick. Then you went from American stick to Japanese stick.
I found it to be easy.
Oh,
I ain't complaining.
Oh, really?
I ain't complaining. No, then again, me and my brother had a past history, even if it's for less than a year. We did piano lessons.
Okay. Well, that definitely would help. That's sure.
On top of that, it's like you kind of do better on an arcade stick than you do on a controller because you have fingers versus thumbs.
Yeah.
I think so there's your accessibility right there. Well, I'd rather operate with my fingers than thumb and a finger on two shoulder buttons. Nah. Give me the arcade stick. So I knew what kind of investment I would have to put in and all the time I would, put in just to even keep up with this community and, explore this hobby.
I know I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but before we kind of go back to your story, right? You ever tried hitbox yet?
Nope. Not my thing.
Good. Not my thing either.
Oh, and since we're talking about hitbox, when I played online on Kylera, we didn't use a fucking USB to whatever a converter. I had to use the keyboard. So I had to use ASDXZC as my buttons, and then the arrow key, that's my right hand for movement.
Yep. That was the classic way. That was the classic way. Hey, tell me this. Were you into emulation during those times?
Oh, yeah.
Because it's funny because that's how I would say my interest of fighting games came to be. Not only when I was first interested in new challenges back then, But during school, especially during lunchtime, I used to go to the computer room a lot, and we would discover a shit ton of ROM sites, and you get
ROM sites were more popular. ROM sites were getting more popular in the 2000s, so it was only common. Everyone had some type of personal ROM set in their computer, so they can play whatever games.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I remember my first ROM set that I downloaded was for the Sega Genesis, and there was a time during the good old days of LimeWire and Kazaa days. You would find like a download that has the Genesis emulator that comes with 600 different games and everything like that, and then you're just able to just download it. The same thing that applies to like all the other emulators, like for Nintendo, Dreamcast, Neo Geo. It was all out there. It was all out there.
Yeah.
Those were some. I want to say those were some. I call them like simpler times, to be honest with you.
Yeah, simpler times.
Very simpler times. But okay, so back to your story, right? You double transitioned from an Xbox controller to an American stick to a Japanese stick. Now you're in the scene. You're in the scene. You're there. Tell me, what was your first tournament?
My first tournament was a tournament in York University. It was January 2005. It was like a week after I introduced myself to the person that introduced me to the scene. And it was like -10 degrees and it was snowing, and I thought it'd be canceled, and it wasn't. And I entered 2 games, CVS 2 and Third Strike. And one of the games I was 0-2 in Third Strike because I didn't know shit about Third Strike as much. And for CVS 2, I was 1 match away from top 8 in a 16-man tournament. So I felt like for my first ever tournament ever, I felt like, all right, you're showing some level of progress. But when I entered this community, I wanted to enter every game that I wanted to know, and let's see how you can progress from there. And I knew it's not going to be an overnight process. It's going to take at least a year or so to kind of see your progression out.
I see. So, how did you do in that tournament?
1 and 2 in CVS 2. Yeah, I didn't get dead last, but it was a great learning experience. I couldn't find a ride back, so I'd like to give a shout out to Dogberry for giving me a ride back that night. And then I told him a little bit about my history, like, hey, I just entered this community. I'll play whatever games. It doesn't matter. He told me a little bit. Yeah, I back then people play. It was all about the CVS 2 because Dogberry did not play Marvel 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the one thing that we did not have an ST machine. We had an AE machine.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we had Anniversary Edition.
I see. So, okay. So, before we go to the next section of this, tell me. Now you gave a shout out to Dogberry, who I know also. Shout out to Dogberry as well. You made the statement that you told him you gave him your history, right?
A little bit of when I met him. When I met him that day, it's like I'll play any game because I just entered this community.
Yeah.
I was very open-minded, and I don't mind learning, some variation of whatever as popular SF2 version there is, which is ST. Problem is, we didn't have ST in this scene. We had AE.
So, what was it? So take me then. What was it like playing on AE instead of ST?
Because I already had the game on the original Xbox,
right.
I figure, okay, let's see how I go. Let's see how I progress and learn online. And then when I went to my first offline event in the main arcade, Orbit, not York University, I managed to get 3rd place in a 12-man bracket in AE. I lost only in winners finals and losers finals, which is kind of crazy to think about it.
Oh,
So
really?
I felt like, hey man, this is my first tournament. I got third place. Like, I think this is the best game I have in my arsenal in the 4 to 5 months I've been in this community. Because I've been training a lot for CVS 2. That's the main game that I wanted to get good at.
Right.
But that was going to be a very big struggle because of the versions you're going through.
I see. Huh. Well,
Yeah. So I would say that Anniversary Edition what was kind of like the best game initially out of my arsenal. I mean, I was already playing CVS 2 EO, a little bit of Marvel vs. Capcom 2, not much Third Strike, but
Right.
I've been playing Guilty Gear XX Reload at the same time also. Along with Capcom Fighting Jam and Anniversary. So I have 6 games to learn out.
damn. Well, okay. I do have a question in terms of the 6-game balancing that you were doing.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's go to the next section in terms of your tournaments, right? Since we've just brought up the whole tournament experience, right? Now, you've traveled. I called you a world warrior, pretty much.
You didn't get 2011 yet.
Oh, right. We'll get back to it. I just want to know something, right?
All right.
In terms of your the tournaments that you've been to every tournament that I would say that's underneath the sun, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you? I just have a question. Like, and it's not like, oh well. Is there a limit? Is there a limit to which tournament that you won't go, or so?
Yeah.
But I would say like, how did you like? I wouldn't say like manage to just go to all these tournaments. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I'm part-time. I worked part-time the entire time.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like traveling wise, like I know part time. I know you work. That's for sure. But I'm saying, like, man, you just been to like every tournament that I would know in the U.S. And
I tried.
And then, you obviously been to the cons as well. So I'm
That goes later on. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, how are you able to just decide to say I'm just gonna go? That's my thing. Like, what kind of
What
gave you the
prompted-
idea to go?
What do you mean? Like, what prompted this idea for me to travel the world?
Yeah, pretty
Is
much. Yeah.
Okay, so since we're going ahead, all right. So this goes all the way to the end of 2010. So we're going into 2011, I would have been in my 6th year in the fighting game community.
Okay.
So within 2010, we've already went through Super Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo HD Remix, and Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Those are the 3 main games of the scene as of that year. What prompted this decision is because I felt a level of I want to be dedicated, but at the same time, there's that barrier of legitimacy and acceptance within your local scene. You understand that?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, okay. I've been in the scene for 6 years, and I felt like the scene was back then. This is back then. The Toronto scene, GTA, whatever you want to call it. Back then, it was not as friendly as it was eventually. Like it was back then. The scene was very, cliquish, pettiness, arguments. Are we really a community? Why are we being held back? Like, and all that stuff. I felt like just because I'm not part of, your clique, that does not translate to, I'm just some peasant that's underneath you and I'm just some scrub. And just because you're the top player, you get to flex on people or whatever. That's the way I felt. So when 2010 hit, what not many people know is that I managed to get top 8 at Midwest Championships for HD Remix and top 2 for Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. Then fast forward a few months later was EVO 2010 to where I managed to get 5th place in Tatsunoko vs. Capcom. I got to play on the big stage, and that was the first year they introduced medals at EVO.
Interesting.
Yeah. hmm So now we're going to the final 6 months of that 2010 season. I wanted to go to more majors, but at the same time, I felt like, am I not good enough? Like I've been here a long time. Every time I ask for help, I get ignored. I always get made fun of. It takes me a minimum of 2 hours in 2 fairs and 3 transfers for me to get to a local session just to play online. I mean, just to play offline, because playing online, it can be a pain in the ass. And I honestly felt like at the time going into 2011, I felt like I was expendable, underappreciated, and underutilized.
I see.
And it really did hurt me. It really hurt me. So I don't want to go into super detail, but it's like I felt like going into 2011, I felt like I did everything my home scene had to offer. I want to explore the US FGC because it's like, well, I never traveled back then prior to Street Fighter 4, so I felt like I wanted to make up that lost time. On top of that, all the people of the previous era, CVS 2, Marvel 2, Third Strike specifically, they did not last. They were gone because they did not adapt to Street Fighter 4, they didn't adapt to HD Remix, and then eventually they did not adapt to Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Because we knew 2011 was going to be special. There's going to be a major almost every month because the whole, sponsorship boom, the Street Fighter 4 boom, the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 boom. I want to explore the scene. I'm very lucky to explore the scene because of the whole $1 megabytes aspect. That shit was real. That was the only reason why I traveled. Cheap buses, cheap everything. I do not have a car. I do not have a driver's license. So anything involving me operating a vehicle is out of the question. That's why I commute and take subways. And for this one, I have to take buses. That's fine. I felt like I needed a bigger challenge towards me. And the one thing I never was able to do prior to Street Fighter 4 was exist in an era from start to finish. You understand?
Yes, sir.
It's like you have the people that started off in the scene in Street Fighter 4 in 2009. Within time, they left. They didn't make it to 2015 where they saw the tail end of the era end. I, along with various others, never got to experience that. So I knew I was going to make a almost 7-year commitment. Yo, I want the best experience possible, and I'm going to see how it goes until Street Fighter 4 ends. So, in a way, along with a lot personal issues too outside of the scene, like I was struggling in school. Like I might as well just work. That's how I managed to save up all that money. And
right.
I just decided, like, you know what? I want the best experience possible. And I'm putting all my dedication to the test. And in a way, as I said before, I felt like internally I did not get that acceptance or legitimacy. Like it was not enough.
Right. I
understand. So in a way, you can say I kind of harbored a little bit of anger to make this dream come true.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah,
converting an anger into traveling the world. I mean, like I would kind of say that's pretty unheard of. But
it is unheard of. But it's like I'm sick. But at the time, like I was just sick and tired of just being underappreciated. I had so much, contributions. I had so much projects. I had so much, things I wanted to make things better, and I felt like I was just brushed away.
Yeah, and you shouldn't feel that way. Nobody shouldn't feel that way at all. I mean, that's pretty scummy. But in hindsight, I'm glad, even though it does suck, but I am happy that you were able to travel the world for sure. Because, I mean, like I said, you were deemed, like, by many people, Mr. World Warrior. So, in hindsight, a negative turned into a super positive, which is pretty awesome. So, like I said, very happy about that for you. So, alongside with that, I know we didn't finish in regards about 2011 or so.
Yeah.
I want you to tell me more in terms of what was going on. Like, keep going by the years, and tell me pretty much what's changed. What has changed for you from 2011 to, let's say, 2017? What each year? I want you to tell me what was going on.
What was going on?
Yeah.
All right, so my initial personal challenge to doing this project is that back then, prior to Street Fighter 4, the US only had 7 majors. 7 and nothing more, nothing less, and these were the only 7 majors that mattered.
Can you tell us what
Evo.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Can you tell us what the majors are?
Not in chronological order. Evo, Final Round, Texas Showdown, Midwest, East Coast, Northeast, and Seasons Beatings.
Nice. Very nice.
Those are the 7 majors. My challenge is, if I'm going to do something as this crazy as it is, I want to go to 8 majors in a year. And just be aware that the Canadian definition of a major is very different. Back then, the Canadian definition of a major was a bunch of international guests and at least a $500 prize pot. It's not like Evo, where it's like, oh, we're expecting 7 Japanese players for this specific game and a $2,000 prize pot. You understand that comparison?
Yep.
All right. So I just wanted to do 8 majors a year. So I know that you're a super turbo. So here, listen to how this relates out. I didn't travel back then when console ST was the standard, and then eventually HD Remix was the standard. I didn't ever played American ST Arcade ST in a major until Midwest 2010. So that's nearly 5 years. And I felt like this was one of the challenges. Of all the games that I can play, I knew Super Turbo was my best game. So this was my chance to at least show at least one time I can get a top 5 appearance in a major. And that eventually did happen. That was 2011. 2012, I repeated the same journey and basically, traveled to 8 majors. 2013, same thing, you shuffle the deck. 2014 is the same thing, you shuffle the deck. And then 2015, you can sacrifice a couple majors if you're going to travel overseas. So that's when I discovered cheap flights. So instead of cheap buses, I also discovered, cheap flights, glitched flights, and all that stuff. And that's how I was able to go to Japan and the Middle East in 2015.
Yeah. And you know what?
26.
Before I let you continue, folks, it's very true. Like, this man honestly put me on to the cheap flights as well too. So if it wasn't for you, which I thank you still to this day, I wouldn't have gone to France actually for the first time. So at the same time, while doing all this, traveling, I wanted to assure that I am not some of the people of the past. I'm not a cliquish person. I'll help someone out. All you just have to do is just listen to me, and within the way, I've helped a lot of people out. Like, you have to travel. This is where all the legitimacy is at. You're going to meet a lot of people. If you're the best player of your scene, what are you going to do? You got to take the next step. You go to the rival scene, Montreal. Then what's up? You go to the next step. You go to America, where all the exposure's at. There's kind of levels to this stuff. Yeah. Interesting. So, what kind of levels that you were dealing with in terms of exposure?
Exposure, it's very hard to get exposure because it's all a popularity type of thing. So I did my own things first to separate myself from my own local scene. I recorded my own sessions and eventually uploaded it to YouTube. I took 2 to 3 hour buses just to go to local so I can support the scene. I played online frequently so I can at least have some type of gaming fix in me to prepare out for another event. It's and then I did the Psycho Rarity channel. All I just did was archived everything, burned it on DVDs, and just stored it out. And I just saved it up almost like a time capsule. And I felt like doing the Psycho Rarity channel was one of the biggest, hardest projects for me to do. So I've done a lot of crazy things within the years. Like, I just want to help out people. Like, you contribute back. I don't want to be viewed as an ungrateful person.
Yeah.
Put it like this, kind of did anger a lot of people. Someone took their time, their money, their wisdom, their sacrifice, their reputation, etc., to make you who you are in the scene. And you feel like you can't do the same?
Well,
you ungrateful son of a bitch, get the fuck out. Yeah. That's how I felt, because when Street Fighter 4 came out, all the people of the previous era never adapted. So it's like the knowledge of the past was not handed down to the next generation.
Right.
I felt like, okay, if that's the way it is, but I may not be the best skilled player, but when it comes to community psychology and how to help people, get their exposure and traveling and getting better, I think I'm the best player for that.
Right. Which you are. Which you are. I mean, you have contributed a lot. And I mean a lot. And especially like the Psycho Rarity channel really has like, and folks don't know, like this man, that's why I call this dude the Canadian Encyclopedia, because this guy has videos for days, man. Like,
days? You mean for months?
Oh, for months.
Videos for months.
I would
for
say,
years.
Yeah, for years too. For years.
Yeah, for years. I have videos for years.
For years. And I know I've been watching a few that dates back to like, 2015, 2014, 2015, 2016. And I'm like, man, look at what I'm looking at here. People just don't know about these like that. I would figure like archives like those get lost in translation a lot, especially those who kind of record them.
They got lost in the ravages of time, because when people download videos, they just watch it, then erase it. No, I want to salvage it. That's what I did.
Yeah. And I greatly appreciate that you salvaged it for sure, man. That was pretty dope. That was very dope of you of doing that. Very dope. So, let's see. Now, do you feel like you have more to tell in terms of the years that went by? Especially, like, we could talk about, like, the Canada Cups and the Canada Cups going to
talk about whatever. I can talk about whatever. Just lay it on me.
Okay, I'll lay it on you, of course. Tell me this, right? Canada Cup, right? Now, like I said in the beginning, right? You definitely introduced me towards Canada Cup, and you hooked me up with the $1 bus trip. That was for sure.
Yep.
Now, originally, the idea was when you first said it, you were giving away the ticket as like a raffle at first.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't a raffle. It wasn't.
No. I personally choose people when it comes to the Psychochronic ticket. I personally choose people because, and that includes internally, because it's like I'm not going to give someone a ticket and I find out that person is either going to mess up or whatever. That goes back to me in a bad way.
Right.
And it can give the vision of, if you accept a ticket from me to a major, you're somehow going to get a bad experience. I don't want that to happen. Or that person's going to leave the scene and I should have helped somebody else out. So I'm not going to pay for someone's ticket, sponsor someone's ticket, and find out that person's going to leave like within like 2 months.
Right.
That's pretty, that's a disrespect to the community.
That is.
And I would have, if that would have been the case, I should have helped somebody else out.
I feel you. But I do.
Yeah. So
I do appreciate
So-
you giving me that ticket,
Yeah.
though. I really do.
Oh yeah, that was easy. Just personally handpick someone that you know that can appreciate the journey. That's it. You knew the
Yeah.
conditions going in on it. I'm just covering your bus ticket, and this is Canada, so it's like you're only gonna enter ST, and that's what $40
Yeah.
for a major.
It was pretty.
Yeah.
It was dirt cheap.
That was cheap as fuck.
It was cheap.
I told y'all. Yeah.
It was definitely cheap. So, and the crazy thing is, that was like the furthest at that time. That was like the furthest journey. I mean, aside from like, if I were going back to the home country and all that stuff. But I would say, for me to go there to play the game that I love, which is like a hobby and everything like that, that was like the furthest journey I've ever did. But man, did I meet like people that, you know, I talk to online a lot, and then I'm like, oh man, I get to finally see them, and it was just an amazing experience because I was like, wow, it's like I get to see so much people. Like I met pretty much, like I said, I met Dogberry, met Unessential, I met you, even though we talked on the line a lot, but I finally met you again, and then. I met, who else? I met, like I said, Unessential, Dogberry, Missing Person, Jed, and then I saw like, damn, what was the boxer player? I forgot what was his name does, but I get to meet him.
Oz.
Yes.
Oz.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
OZ.
Yeah, man, I got to meet him, and man, it was such an experience just meeting these guys. So it was pretty awesome. So
Yeah, I just wanted to spice something up for Canada Cup. It's like Canada Cup is the home major, so you know, there's always a kind of a rule in me of even if you were not to play any of these games, you show up to your home major. Don't watch it at home like a stream monster. Like be there in person.
right,
So I always made it a point. Like if it's a home major, I'm gonna show up.
absolutely.
So I felt like I wanted to do something, you know, nobody could ever do before. If I can sponsor people internally, I don't mind sponsoring at least one person externally. I'll do it. I'll take the risk on that.
Right. Well, I'm glad you took the risk on me. I mean, like I said, I did pretty okay that first time. I went 3-2, and I was like, man, I got to meet a lot of people during that time. Heck, I got to meet Mike Watson as well too during that time, and I got to commentate with him out of nowhere. It was just pretty awesome to just do that. And it's funny because it's kind of funny because you and Mike Watson give that, like I said, that really grassroots feel, that, man, you should just always be yourself and just...
We kind of have that OG mentality.
Exactly.
We kind of have that OG mentality.
Exactly, like the OG mentality. Like you guys make me, I would say, like make me feel better in terms of about myself in terms of that. And you be dropping the knowledge and the lores and everything. So you guys are definitely appreciated. So, but tell me this. Let's talk more about tournaments, right? Now, of all the tournaments you've been to, right? Which one would you rank your favorite?
Summer Jam 5.
All right, tell me. What made that one your favorite?
That was my favorite tournament because of a lot of factors going in. Summer Jam 5 was one of the majors I wanted to explore initially within that first 2011 season. So with Summer Jam 5, and I made a whole episode about this. I sponsored 3 people for this part, but I have to personally choose people that have either A, helped me out, or B, have never traveled before. So this one was basically primarily about Marvel vs. Capcom 3 because the Super Street Fighter 4 in Toronto was dying and the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 was rising, and it kind of solidified that the OGs of the previous era are not coming back. On top of this, going to Summer Jam 5 we went during the initial stages of Hurricane Irene. So imagine going before, a big natural disaster, but you find out it's a tropical storm. Then you find out you have 12 people from the rival scene, Montreal Street Fighter, in this building. So it's basically almost felt like a Canadian invasion. On top of that, there was a past time frame where Toronto never made any relations with Big E. So that's why there was always a saying back then in Toronto that NEC is one of the least hype majors to go to. I wanted to break the stigma and just assure it. Welcome to the new blood. So one of the biggest memories that solidified and got me emotional was when RDK, Lord Jimmy Bones, and Freddy Loco were in the Marvel 3 team tournament and they beat Smooth Viper's team. I forget who was on that team. It was Smooth Viper, some other person, and Mugetsu, aka Rogue Yoshi. So when RDK beat Smooth Viper, he pops off right to his face. Literally, let's fucking go. And then in the ending, when Lord Jimmy Bones clutches it out to Rogue Yoshi, big pop off, and you can hear a giant Canada chant, a bunch of Canada chants in the background. That to me felt like it was an invasion. I get to spearhead my first Canadian invasion, and everything that you've ever envisioned came true.
Oh, really?
So Summer Jam 5 is one of the most emotional tournaments to me. To me, it was even better than placing at Evo for TBC, in my opinion.
I see. Well, that's an interesting. What an interesting time that was for you.
Yeah. So when you sponsor 3 people and you're going before Hurricane Irene, and with the intention of, and then the aftermath of that is now more people want to travel to that. So to me, Summer Jam 5 was the catalyst tournament of why more Canadians started traveling. The storyline goes, here's the guy from Canada who got top 5 in TBC, but he's bringing his boys with him.
Right.
For Marvel 3. Now you get to see what kind of invasion it is. And also, going into the mindset, us Canadians do not get recognition and respect in comparison to other countries, and we've always felt historically overshadowed. I want to change all that.
So
now you understand? You understand?
I do.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
I wanted to change all that. Just convince more Canadians to travel. That's all. That's all.
Well, that's pretty awesome. Summer Jam 5. Before
Summer Jam 5. Of all majors, of what was my favorite major, I would say Summer Jam 5 was my favorite.
Okay. And Summer Jam 5 was like, man.
2011. So this was Chris G's first ever major win. By the timeline, yeah, this is Chris G's first ever major win, because this was vanilla Marvel 3 still.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's very good to know. Very good to know.
Mm-hmm.
So, in terms of impact, would that be the same tournament that you made the most impact as well, or there's another?
Which tournament have I made the most impact?
Yeah.
East Coast Throwdown 2018.
Was that the one for the TOL3 qualifier?
Yes.
Yeah, that was the one. I remember that one.
That was a tough tournament.
It was.
Because I remembered going to I almost got denied access to America.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I didn't have any hotel proof, because I'm always with Tony Majors in the Madoka arcade, so I'm always rooming with him. So I never pay a hotel room because I'm technically working for him. Right. So like, you need some type of lodging proof, and I didn't have any, and I almost got threatened to be deported back to Canada, and then you're denied access because you didn't prove it. So I managed to. They kind of, I don't know what the word is, pity, sympathy, etc. They just let me in through, and I fucking went to Summer Jam with a mission of like, yo, I want to qualify for Tournament of Legends, because like at the time I went to the most. You went to the most qualifiers at 8.
Yeah.
So this would be my 5th qualifier. My grandfather died a couple weeks before. My flight to X Street Battle got canceled because the airline got bankrupt. My ankle was broken in 3 different places due to a freak accident, or a freak workout routine accident. And it was like, I'm getting really angry at this point. So that was the year that I got top 8. Okay, so East Coast Throwdown, top 8 Alpha 2, top 3 CVS 2, but you earn the right to face Boss, top 3 ST, but there's a huge domino effect where me, you, and Super RV were the only 3 that was eligible to qualify for COL from that major.
Yeah, man. Oh, man.
And I remember that. And I remember the pop-off I did to come back when I fucking did jump super. I just did jump super, and I fucking crotch chopped him and throw slashed him because there was a history behind that.
Yeah, beef would come back.
I wouldn't say beef, but let's just say he said something very offensive to me that was offensive to my scene. I never forgot. Yeah, just like Michael Jordan, I took it personal.
Yes,
you do not say, hey, no offense, but your tournament for you can 7, no offense, but I can get top 3. Excuse me? Hold time out. 3 of our best players, Bort, David Spence, and whomever, they didn't show up. Me and Atari didn't get top 8. Chirity did get top 8. What makes you think you can get top 3 in a Canadian major if you can't travel? Nah.
Wow.
Nah. Because of that, he kind of did piss off Toronto. So here we are a year and a half later, and I beat him for Tournament of Legends.
Wow.
Yeah,
that was crazy. That was crazy.
That's offensive to me.
That was crazy. Wow.
Travel. Internationally, travel internationally. We always gotta go to you. Well, here was your chance to come to us. Too late now.
Yeah. You know, the funny thing about that top 8, it just like you said, it was just
It was hilarious.
It was hilarious because that top 8, yeah. So and this is the thing. There's more towards this top 8, right?
Oh,
so
there's a domino effect. It's a domino effect.
It was.
Ended up to my favor.
It was. It was kind of crazy. So let me describe this to everybody, right? In terms of this top 8 scenario, right? The top 8 was you, me, Super V, Boss, Tech Monkey, Comeback, and who was number 8? I think it was
Henry Sen.
That's right.
No,
not Henry Sen. 6 buttons. That's right. 6 buttons.
Because I beat Henry Sen to get into top 8.
That's right. So the thing was about this top 8, right, folks, is out of the top 8, just like what Brett says, 3 of us was only eligible to go, right? Well, actually, technically, 6 buttons was eligible to go, but this was the caveat behind this. The thing was, nobody in this top 8 was going to go to Canada anyway, except pretty much you, me. I think Super V was like 50-50 during that time. So, and then we're getting into the midst of everything, right? Because Comeback was also there. Comeback said, yeah, he wasn't going to go either. So basically, nobody except roughly 3 people was able to go, right?
Yeah.
Then when you beat Comeback, right? When you beat Comeback, the funniest thing was after that was that not only you beat him, the confusion right there, the confusion behind that happened.
Nope.
Because
there is no confusion.
There is none. There is. I'm gonna explain why. Right. Because it went towards we were talking with regards toward the prize pool, because Atari said the prize was gonna go to the person that was qualified to go, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the top 3, which was
Technical Monkey, Boss, and me,
and you. Well, no. Was it 3rd place was somebody? Oh, it was you, right? You
yes, it is.
It was. That's right. 3rd place. So my bad. So the thing was, the first 2 wasn't gonna go.
Yeah.
Everybody else wasn't gonna go.
Time out. And even if I did lose the comeback, it doesn't matter. I'm gonna go because he was already qualified but forfeited. That's how Atari was his replacement.
Yes, exactly.
So you have a bunch of domino effects going on of, well, I'm your only option left.
Yep, it was. It was so funny. And then everybody, we were all. I remember you came up to me in Super V, and you was like, when we were talking about it, you was like, "Damn, wait a minute. Well, who's gonna get the prize pool?" And you came behind us, and you was like, "Oh man, does this mean that I get it? Do I get the prize pool?" So we really sat there and thought about it, and we was like, "Well, yeah, because technically." You didn't win, but you win in a way.
Yeah.
So it was like it was a real funny situation with that, and that's how he got. It was hilarious, and that's how he got the qualifier because the first two wasn't gonna go, and then
even if even if Boss would have went, it wouldn't matter because he was technically qualified from SCR. So in a way, that's how Killer Miller gets to go to. Me and Killer Miller are in a similar situation.
Oh man,
third place gets to go.
That was crazy. That was crazy. Man.
That was hilarious.
It was hilarious.
Like there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, there was nothing you could do about it. And I was like, I was sitting there with Super V, and we were like looking at each other. We were like, man, this was happening. And you hugged us both, by the way.
Actually, I hugged him because Comeback beat Super V.
Yes, that's
and
right.
I wanted that to happen because Super V beat me at Summer Jam. And I felt some type of way about this. And I'm like, whoever wins, if Comeback beats Super V, it doesn't matter. It goes to me one way or another.
Right. Yep. It is true. It was true. It was true. But man, what a what a time that was. What a day that was. That was so interesting.
To me, that was a redemption. That was a redemption because I entered 5 TOL qualifiers for TOL 2 and failed. This time I had to repeat the exact journey but succeeded.
Yeah, you did. Yes, you did. And
that to me was a redemption arc.
It was. And I was real happy. And at the same time, I was real happy for you. Very happy for you that you got that. So I was very happy for you, man. Like you won.
I was crying when I fucking qualified, yo.
I know. That's why I said you came and hugged us with that, and I was like, man. And I was still sitting there confused, but I'm like, you know what? Congratulations at the end of the day. Like, well, I would say truly deserved, and your name was engraved on that poster as a qualifier.
I still have it. It's in my wall right now. I'm seeing it.
Damn, man, that's awesome.
That to me is better than an Evo medal. To me, in my opinion, that to me having the autograph poster is better than an Evo medal, in my opinion.
Oh man, that's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I can't believe it. That's awesome. What a day that was, man. Man, oh man.
I was a struggling. I almost got denied access to the U.S.
Man, yeah. So in a way, like you said, that was your redemption. Man, that was awesome. What a redeeming story that was. Very redeeming. Wow. So, all right. So let's go on. Right now, we've moved past the tournaments. Let's talk about the FGC as a whole. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now. Let's talk about the modern right now, right? I want your thoughts about it. What do you feel? How do you feel about it nowadays?
Good. I mean, you're getting, new games, new player bases, new opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Do you think the direction that is going towards, which is the esports, is it helping or hurting the FGC?
It can be a bit of both.
Do tell. Why you say that?
It's not like, well, I understand, I think times have changed because it's like we have to be more friendly to each other. It's not like we can just viciously hound players in the background. We just don't do that.
Right.
Prize pots, corporations are stepping in. So there's a way that we got to behave. if you do one bad thing, let's say, I don't know, I accidentally killed an ant, I'm gonna get canceled. Or I swallowed a paperclip by accident. Oh, you're canceled. I don't want to go through that.
Right.
It's more expensive these days. Oh yeah, majors, any events these days just got expensive because of costs. You know that back then, we didn't stream. Someone just brought in their video camera. Now you have to stream because, you know, not everyone can show up to a tournament, but they just want to watch it virtually.
Right.
So there's a lot of standards, you know, just to even maintain a community or even a small player base within a community. Very expensive hobby.
Right.
So, and it always has been. It's always has been.
Oh yeah, it definitely has been. Especially like I think nowadays I would say like the most expensive part of the hobby is the traveling, and then now
the travel.
Besides the traveling,
Events just basically became almost conventions if you think about it. So I can understand, you know, the price gauging and the inflation to run an event and having to charge people for events.
That's true.
You can say that's a factor.
Yeah, it does. It does play a huge factor.
Now we're in an age where almost every game is accessible, so there's always at least some sort of player base.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it.
Yeah.
Some type of interest.
Yeah, it is some type. I would say it's some type of interest because now I kind of said, like, you know how the old guard is not there anymore, and
the old guards are not.
It's not there anymore. I would say, like, just like you said, now you're getting new players. You're getting brand new players. It's reaching out. I feel like now it's reaching out more to the casual to come, you know, to come through. And I would say like nowadays it's interesting because it does a good, like, I feel like it does a good job trying to reach the casuals, especially like for Street Fighter 6, because that was what their aim was, because the old, like I said, the old guard couldn't really do it, you know, can't really do it anymore in terms of like, oh, well, yeah, it's time to like gatekeep the, you know, the newer community that, you know, to come in and like, you know, do damage or anything like that. But now it's like, oh, well, the newer folks is coming in, and man, you never heard of these guys, but these guys are ripping. Like,
yeah, these guys just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, like they came out of nowhere and basically like, man, you got these guys just making top 8s, top 4s, and it's like, man, this is crazy. It's like, who is this dude? But then it's like, oh, well, we don't know who he is, but my man's making waves. And then now here we are, like, it's still expanding. So I feel like it's in a good place. I just think, just like you said, like we have to be more nicer to each other. That's for sure. And I feel like, well, personally, this is probably the old school in me. Is I'm all for beef, but as long as it's settled in a set, then that's fine with me. You know what I mean? Because I feel like that's what's exciting. Like beef sets, I think it's still exciting towards me. That's how I feel.
I feel like, okay, we all have to be, you know, welcoming to people. And that's fine, but it's like at the same time, I'm not just gonna hand you everything.
Yeah, of course.
You understand? I'm not gonna hand you everything, and that's the thing that kind of does irk me is like, I don't want to chase people of like, yo, when we have an event here, you're gonna show up. I don't want to give constant reminders if the other side is not gonna do their research about their own local scene. So in a way, growing a scene is a two-way street. We may not have to get along, but at the same time, I'm not handing you everything.
I feel that.
And that's the thing that these new players or recent players have kind of been having, is like, we want everything handed to us, but we're not going to do the research for it. Even something as little as when the next events are and where people play, even something like that.
Oh man. Nope, you're right. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure, bro. Okay, so I see what you're saying. So, alongside that question, because I know you said the esports it's like a double-edged sword in a way. And now, let's talk more about it, right? In terms of what do you see in the next 5 years the FGC is going to become exactly, in your own words?
I don't even know. That I can't answer. The next 5 years, so if you say the next 5 years, that means Street Fighter 6 would be in its final season, or Street Fighter 7 would be in development. Because it takes about 6 or 7 years for a game's era, to exist from start to finish. Well, a game's competitive era from start to finish. I just don't want to see Capcom go the NRS route of a new game every 2 years.
I see.
I think, I wouldn't say that this would be like some type of like bubble burst, like a .com industry of a bubble burst, but it's like, I think we're still going to be that niche community that we always were.
Oh, really?
But we provide the best hype in terms of other esports communities and esports, Counter-Strike, League. I feel like the FGC provides the biggest amount of hype, but I feel like we have the lowest in terms of payouts. And because of this, because of this, I feel like we are looked down on other scenes because of payout.
Oh man, speaking of payouts, man, you know what's funny? Yeah. I feel like the payout situation is very interesting in a way, because here we are, right? Capcom Cup passed, first $1 million tournament for Street Fighter 6, right? Mm-hmm. Since then, it's kind of funny. Actually, let me backtrack a little bit, right? Before Capcom Cup, right? There were a lot of, if you remember, there were like a lot of online tournaments for it, right? Where the payouts were like $2K, $3K, $4K, almost $5,000 one time. Then Capcom
for the CPTs back then.
Well, this was pre-CPT. Like, remember, I want to say like when Street Fighter 6, like, was super fresh, before, after the whole beta fiasco, you know what I'm saying? I would say like when it was really fresh, that's when all the online tournaments came out and everything. And basically you had like tournaments that had like 3K, 4K, 5K pots and everything like that. And it was kind of amazing. Now, fast forwarding that, we have the CPTs. Then the CPT, the Capcom Cup, which was a mill. Then after Capcom Cup, that's when you have like tournaments that were like, I want to say like it kind of went back to business as usual in a way, because that's when the low payouts were still happening. But then afterwards, I feel like, I think it's still struggling at this point, because I believe this past Evo, like, shout outs to Punk, by the way.
He won $15,000.
Yeah, exactly.
$15,000. That's weak.
Yeah,
that's an insult.
It is, and he said he felt robbed because of that. That was kind of crazy.
$15,000 for Evo. Well, Tekken World Tour does $50,000 to $75,000. Capcom Pro Tour has had $250,000 to $1 million. Like, this is pretty pathetic if you think about it.
Yeah. It really was.
Yeah.
It really is. It really was. It's like, it's kind of crazy. So it's like I didn't realize how bad it was until I heard, and now I'm like, this is bad. So I wonder
you gotta
why.
Understand. I like, you gotta understand, like, majority of the FGC since the history of time, we're all just a bunch of young adults and students with limited discretionary income and hoping to go to a tournament in order to recoup those costs through winnings.
Right.
It's like, and if you win the biggest game possible, Street Fighter 6, and you're only getting 15 grand, that's an insult. Like, that's not good. I understand, like, poker style payout, share, quote unquote, share the wealth, but like 15 grand for a 5,000, how many people entered Street Fighter 6? Like 5,000?
It was 5.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That is ridiculous. 5,000 times. That's $50,000 right there. You're paying $300 to enter a fucking and travel halfway around the world. I understand the prestige, but everyone wants that money. One way or another, everyone wants money.
Yeah. But man, 15K.
Everyone wants that sponsorship. Everyone wants that team. I understand that it is for the modern gamers, but even to us OGs and some of the people of this modern day that only play these retro games, we're not sponsored. Like, there's a difference. It's like, one of the differences with me is I play for the love of the games. It's not about the money to me. If it was about the money to me, then I would have only strictly focused on the CPT, if you think about it.
You're right. Yeah. You're right. Well, okay. Speaking of the retro scene, tell me something. What are your thoughts on the retro scene of today anyway?
Even better than it was years ago. Because when Street Fighter 4 came out, all the games that were considered retro, so CVS 2, Marvel 2, Third Strike, kicked out the curb. So within time, depending on the game, Vampire, CVS 2, whatever, everything gets revived within time. So I'm very lucky and fortunate that we have emphasis on the retro games now than it was 10 to 13 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So tell me this in regards about the retro scene, right? Considering that, we find ways to kind of improve our gameplay, right? Not only our gameplay, but logistics wise with like the cabs and everything like that, right? We got obviously the super guns, and then we got the super guns with the DB15s, cabs that has the DB15 decoders in there at this point, the misters and everything like that. And then now you saw at Evo, you had like the TV super gun that was there. I want to know, what are your thoughts that nowadays that instead of playing on a standard candy cab, which sticks are there, now folks is like, transitioning to the bring your own controller type of scenario. What are
everything?
Your thoughts about
that's a natural process. That's natural.
Now, I can understand it's natural, but I want to know something, right? Now, as an OG of yourself, I know you are sort of accepting in terms of that because it brings new people, right? But I want to say, do you feel like when it's really tournament and vendor dependent that people should be in an uproar about it? Like, do you feel like people should be upset if it's up to the TO's discretion? That
up to the
like
the TO's discretion is that it's whatever they have accessible.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so in Toronto, you cannot find a CPS 3 board to play Third Strike. So the only way to play Third Strike in Toronto is 30th Anniversary Collection. In Toronto, it's all about the arcade, and they don't play anything less. So if you're going to play Super Turbo or Alpha 3, you're playing on the arcade, and you're not playing on 30th Anniversary. So it really all depends on your scene's accessibility. In Vancouver, they don't have arcade boards aside from one person that's willing to go out of their way to donate. So they have to play on 30th Anniversary Collection, which kind of sucks, but it's all it's all a case-by-case basis depending on which scene that you're in. I'm all for arcade, and I'm all for, whatever standard, but every major has its own standards of, you go to East Coast Throwdown, you're playing on a cabinet and you are not playing on a mister. Whereas in Combo Breaker, you're playing on a super gun or a mister and you're not playing on a cabinet. But as long as it's both identical hardware that has easy accessibility, such as bring your own sticks, I don't see any issues.
I feel that. I feel you. I feel you. I feel you. So you don't have much of an issue in regards about it. So okay, I completely understand. I respect that answer of yours. Right? For me, I'm pretty split about it. Not that I don't have a problem with, playing comfortably on that, but to me, if I'm thinking in the tournament mindset, right? As a tournament player, I have to kind of get accustomed to whatever I play on because
for sure. I felt that I felt that at CEO when I played Alpha 2 because it's like playing on a Mr. FPGA was way different than playing on a cabinet.
Yeah. It was, and because Mister is a little bit it's a little bit faster, but it was pretty easy to kind of set up in a way. But that was the same deal with when we played at Evo 2022 where we had Mister's then. So it was pretty interesting then. But I completely understand in regards about that. So, all right. Now that we got like the tournament out the way and the FGC, right? Let's talk about your goals at this point, right? Now, I know for a fact I know you, and you're very project heavy for sure, right? I want you to give me what are your next goals for the next 5 years? Like what tournaments? I
don't even know if I'm going to be alive in the next 5 years.
You're going to be alive in the next 5 years, man. Come on.
I had a seizure before I fully moved here. Trust me. It's not... I've been more freakish about my life ever since I moved here.
I see.
All right. So 5 years, I don't know. My goal that I can think of is that I want to make it all the way to January 2023. I mean, January 23, 2025, so I can be one of the very few people to say I existed 20 years in this community. It's almost impossible for anyone to exist 10 years in this scene. I always felt like longevity, along with extraordinary activities, play a factor to your legacy. So I always felt like, okay, maybe I could do more travel if there's more tournaments that interest me. For the right flight, maybe I'd like to do to continue more of my vlog project that I've done, the Rarity Talk, that researches my history of the FGC, but also incorporates the Canadian history.
Right.
So that's something that hardly anyone could do. I want to interview more people for my vlog so I can get more of a history of the scene. And I'm just going to continue continue doing retro streaming because there's nobody else in Canada doing, consistently streaming their Fightcade matches. Not only that, but that would travel to the majors for it. There's a lot of other places I'd like to travel to. Vampire Street Battle or Jazzy Circuit or some other major I've not been to. I really don't know. I mean, 5 years is a long commitment.
I know it's a long commitment, but it's a pretty. I feel like it's a pretty good question to ask in a way. So, I mean, it could change over time. You know what I mean? I can understand.
Oh yeah,
sure. It could totally change over time. But I feel like one of those that kind of question kind of brings out. I feel like in terms of what you want, I feel like it's like what you want to do versus what you're going to do. I feel like it's kind of different. What you want to do is, okay, you want to go to VSB, but what you're going to do is you're probably end up going to HFS or something like that. So
yeah.
It's things like that, which
that can happen. That's realistically possible.
Absolutely. It is absolutely possible.
So I felt like my role now is basically like I feel like I'm the last of the dying era. All those OGs are gone and I'm still here. I feel like I have a lot of contributions left. And I have a lot of projects that I'd like to work on. I just feel a pride of, I'm basically one of the very few Canadians that can do all this crazy dedicated shit that would be considered impossible for anyone to do.
Right.
I feel like my journey now, it's like it could never be duplicated. And like I've been through like almost hell and back just to get to where I'm at now. So I don't know what else. I mean,
I understand. I mean, it's like I said, it's one of those questions that, I mean, you can only so far can tell what your plans is then, but 5 years, it's kind of a lot to think about. So I can completely understand. So, okay, so tell me, what are the tournaments that you want to go to? Like
that I want to go to.
Yeah. That you have not been there yet.
HFS is one of them. I know HFS is for sure because it's the Retro France major, and it's not a singular game major. It's not just focused on like a XSB or a VSB. So I think going through some type of like retro challenge in Europe would be a great thing. Jazzy circuit, I don't see why not. Like, okay, I understand that it's all third strike, but if they were willing to put, side events like they did this previous one, why not? It's just a cheap way to go. Basically, any major where, I can cheapen my way out if you think about it. If I can somehow work for the said major, like I just did CEO and I will ECT, I'm going to take that opportunity if I can. I don't know what else majors I'd like to go to in this current era. I mean, I wish I had a time machine. And yeah, I know that's one segment I'd like to do, FGC time machine.
That would be cool. I mean, technically, you should come to one of my barbecues, man. I mean,
are you housing me?
Yeah, well, I have no problem doing that.
You sure? Because that's been the factor of why I need to travel. If you can house me.
Oh, of course, I can try. You know what? We could talk about that pretty much after. This conversation. But I have
for sure.
But overall, I don't have a problem doing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem doing it. So, but okay. So now we reach to the end, right? We reach to the end. Now, tell me something. What are your final thoughts of your, final thoughts? Like, what do you want to say to everybody that's watching this episode?
I don't know what to say. I mean,
you don't know.
I'm even lucky. I'm lucky and fortunate to exist this long, but I felt like, I just wanted to do right things,
Right. Well, you have done.
I just wanted to do right things. And, a little bit of appreciation can go a long way, but I've always been in the realm of I can do so much and not get a simple thank you. That really can affect your mindset and can affect your mental state of, do I really need to be here?
I know.
I just wanted to be the best person, one of the best Canadian Street Fighter players possible.
Well, to me, my brother, you have achieved that, to be honest with you. And honestly, like I said, you're probably one of the only people that I've met from Canada, right? That good heart, good soul, really good in multi-games. Honestly, would travel the world, and not to mention with the upbeat attitude that would.
Oh, and I documented everything. And I always felt like if I'm gonna be in this scene for an extremely long time, I gotta document everything I've ever done.
I know.
That's what that's what people never did. They never documented what they've ever done.
I know, and that's very impressive. That is very impressive that you have done that. Which is why I said, man, like I said, you're the Canadian encyclopedia, bro. Like, you have everything, like, documented, which is very impressive. And it's on your Psychorarity tube, pretty much. And for that, like I said, I'm really, 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 really appreciative of you, man, because I would thought that I know my history, but watching your channel, it makes me feel like, man, I really have a lot to learn in terms of that. And I learn more through you in terms of that. Like, that's what makes me respect you a lot in terms of that. So I thank you so much for that. So tell me now, do you have any shout outs that you want to give out?
I'm bad at shout outs because if I miss out a name, someone's gonna get mad at me.
Oh, okay, so just shout out to the world.
I guess.
I feel you on that. Now, folks, his social and everything is going to be in the description. So if you want to follow him, you can. Why don't you tell the people what's your socials? They can follow you.
Facebook, Bread is Godlike. Instagram, Bread is Godlike. Twitch, Psychorarity. What not many people know is that I'm also a nightclub and rave photographer, so I get paid to party every weekend and I take pictures. So not every one of us are nerdy motherfuckers that sit at home and play games 23 hours a day in hopes of being sponsored. There's lives. There's a world out there, you know. You can't just be ingrained in the scene. You know, I've made that mistake before, you know. So just explore the world, take a break from games if you can. Just try to be the best person that you could be.
I feel that, and that's pretty much the best advice to give to everybody.
Yeah.
Be the best person that you can be.
Yeah.
And never change.
The reason I have my the Psychorarity Twitch channel on is because like there's no other Canadians that's streaming retro games and Fightcade on a constant basis. So I feel like I'm the only person that's been doing this the last like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there has to be some type of Canadian retro representation. And I feel like I'm one of the very few options left that you have here.
Which is true. You're definitely part of
and
that.
And I'll travel to compete. So you can't call me an online warrior.
Yeah. You can't.
And
Yeah, you can't. That's right. You can't. Because you
everything I've done, everything is overshadowed. Everything I've done overshadows being an online warrior. Because at least I'll show my face to an event.
Which is true. Which is the world warrior himself. So,
yeah.
But yeah, man.
I've always encouraged people, you know, if you want to take the next step, you explore your local scene and then eventually evolve into exploring a major, just to at least once say, you know, where you finally stand and, you know, just get some experience and understand what the FGC is like outside of, you know, your home scene or outside of your computer screen.
Right.
Yeah.
So, very thoughtful words right there. But hey, man, let me just say, like I said, man, it's an honor having you, honestly.
Yep.
And thank you for dropping a lot towards this episode,
I tried,
man. I know you tried.
I tried,
and I appreciate it, man. I did. I really do. I really do appreciate that you've given me some time to record this episode, man. Like, it's one of those things that I really thought about, and I'm like, man, I really have to have you on here because you, like I said, you're just literally the walking encyclopedia. But it's not only limited to one game. It's like so many games that you have. So folks who are listening to this, be sure to follow this man and watch his streams too, because he is streaming some really, really, really vintage tournaments. So it's really out there. So please make sure you follow this man. So once again, Brett, thank you so much for being part of this episode, my man. I mean, it's really an honor, and I thank you so much for being a part of it.
Yeah, man, honored to be here.
Okay. All right, folks. So this is your boy Megaman, and this is Psychochronic. And thank you for all watching. We'll see you in the next episode. Peace out.